a preview of coming attractions, looking ahead to the modern era, 1450 to 2015. While ties of empire, culture, commerce, and disease surely linked many of the peoples in the world of the 15th century, none of those connections operated on a genuinely global scale. Although the densest webs of connection had been woven within the Afro-Eurasian zone of interaction, this huge region had no sustained ties with the Americas, and neither of them had sustained contact with the peoples of Pacific Oceania. That situation was about to change, as Europeans in the 16th century and beyond forged a set of genuinely global relationships that generated sustained interactions among all of these regions. That huge process and the many outcomes that flowed from it marked the beginning of what world historians commonly call the modern age, the more than 5 centuries that followed the voyages of Columbus starting in 1492. Over those 5 centuries, the previously separate worlds of Afro-Eurasia, the Americas, and Pacific Oceania became inextricably linked, with enormous consequences for everyone involved. Global empires, a global economy, global cultural exchanges, global migrations, global disease, global wars, and global environmental changes have made the past 500 years a unique phase in the human journey. Those webs of communication and exchange, the first defining feature of the modern era, have progressively deepened, so much so that by the end of the 20th century, few of any people lived beyond the cultural influences, economic ties, or political relationships of a globalized world. Several centuries after the Columbian voyages, and clearly connected to them, a second distinctive feature of the modern era took shape: the emergence of a radically new kind of human society, first in Europe during the 19th century, and then in various forms elsewhere in the world. The core feature of such societies was industrialization, with its sustained growth of technological innovation, and its massive consumption of energy and raw materials. The human ability to create wealth made an enormous leap forward in a very short period of time, at least by world history standards. Accompanying this economic or industrial revolution was an equally distinctive and unprecedented jump in human numbers, a phenomenon that has affected not only human beings, but also many other living species and the Earth itself. Moreover, these modern societies were far more urbanized and much more commercialized than ever before, as more and more people began to work for wages, to produce for the market, and to buy the requirements of daily life rather than growing or making those products for their own use. These societies gave prominence and power to holders of urban wealth, merchants, bankers, industrialists, educated professionals, at the expense of rural landowning elites, while simultaneously generating a substantial factory working class and diminishing the role of peasants and handicraft artisans. Modern societies were generally governed by states that were more powerful and intrusive than earlier states and empires have been, and they offered more of their people an opportunity to play an active role in public and political life. Literacy in modern societies was far more widespread than ever before, while new national identities became increasingly prominent, competing with more local loyalties and with those of empire. To the mix of established religious ideas and folk traditions were now added the challenging outlook and values of modern science, with its secular emphasis on the ability of human rationality to know and manipulate the world. Modernity has usually meant a self-conscious awareness of living and thinking in new ways that deliberately depart from tradition. This revolution of modernity, comparable in its pervasive consequences only to the agricultural revolution of some 10,000 years ago, introduced new divisions and new conflicts into the experience of humankind. The ancient tensions between rich and poor within particular societies were now paralleled by new economic inequalities among entire regions and civilizations, and a much altered global balance of power. The first societies to experience the modern transformation, those in Western Europe and North America, became both a threat and a source of envy to much of the rest of the world. As modern societies emerged and spread, they were enormously destructive of older patterns of human life, even as they gave rise to many new ways of living. Sorting out what was gained and what was lost during the modern transformations has been a persistent and highly controversial thread of human thought over the past several centuries. A third defining feature of the last 500 years was the growing prominence of European peoples on the global stage. In ancient times, the European world, focused in the Mediterranean basin of Greek culture and the Roman Empire, was but one of several second-wave civilizations in the Eastern Hemisphere. After 500 CE, Western Europe was something of a backwater, compared to the more prosperous and powerful civilizations of China and the Islamic world. In the centuries following 1500, however, this western peninsula of the Eurasian continent became the most innovative, most prosperous, most powerful, most expansive, and most imitated part of the world. European empires spanned the globe. European peoples created new societies all across the Americas and as far away as south of Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. Their languages were spoken all, and their Christian religion was widely practiced throughout the Americas and in parts of Asia and Africa. Their businessmen bought, sold, and produced goods around the world. It was among Europeans that the scientific and industrial revolutions first took shape, with enormously powerful intellectual and economic consequences for the entire planet. The quintessentially modern ideas of liberalism, nationalism, feminism, and socialism all bore the imprint of their European origin. By the beginning of the 20th century, Europeans, or peoples of European descent, exercised unprecedented influence and control over the Earth's many other peoples, a wholly novel experience in human history. For the rest of the world, growing European dominance posed a common challenge. Despite their many differences, the peoples of Asia, Africa, the Middle East, the Americas, and Pacific Oceania all found themselves confronted by powerful and intrusive Europeans. The impact of this intrusion and how various peoples responded to it, resistance, submission, acceptance, imitation, adaptation, represent critically important threads in the world history of the past 5 centuries.